Hello, I'm Mariano from GlooData. GlooData is a no-code tool that allows non-technical users to connect their internal systems to Slack, Microsoft Teams, Google Chat, Discord, email, SMS, and others. This is done by deploying it using their marketplace from their cloud provider of choice. From there, GlooData has access to their internal systems, and it provides a no-code UI they can use to configure, test, and deploy their integrations. The UI looks a little bit like Notion. It used the outline style, and where each line has a specific type and it does something in particular. The main thing users create in this UI is the playbook, which is something that you can run and deploy. And the playbook has two main sections. The trigger section that specifies when this playbook runs. In this case, it will run on a schedule every minute. The user can specify more complex schedules using different options. The UI only shows things that the user has selected and configured, so it stays as minimal as possible and only shows what's relevant for the playbook at hand. There's no UI for things that are defaults or are not configured. In the future, we are planning to add support for other kind of triggers like webhooks. The second section is the step section, where the actual playbook steps are specified. In this case, we have a simple HTTP request that will fetch the missions from the SpaceX API, and a line that will send a message to Slack. By default, the HTTP request is pretty simple, but more advanced options can be specified, like the HTTP method, an advanced way to configure the URL, the HTTP headers, and how to handle the response. Almost on all lines, tags and notes can be added. These are for human organization. They don't mean anything for the tool, but can be used to add notes and search for tags and organize. And the send Slack message by default will include configuration like the authentication token, the channel ID, message text, using in notifications or when the rich text is not specified. And then the rich text message has different sections. We can change them and they will automatically be previewed on the right. So we know how the message is going to look before we send it. We can run some of the lines, the ones that can be run interactively to see if they work. So I run the HTTP request, and on the right I get the run logs. It started at this time and it ended with status 200, and it has some outputs. If I expand the outputs, I can see that the response has a list of 9 missions, each of which has some information. We also have metric information, when it started, when it ended, how much time it took, and the size of the response. And headers, like if the request was okay, the status of the response, and the headers. So we can use this information for other integrations. And we can also try the Slack message. So if I click run, it will run and it says that authentication failed. This is because my authentication token is not set, so I can try again. Now it says that the channel is not found. So this channel doesn't exist. I will add one that exists. I can try it now. You can hear in the background that the message was sent to our Slack channel. And now that we are okay with that integration, we can run the playbook itself. Now it started and it triggers every minute, so it was sent, and it will continue sending every minute as a deployed playbook. We can customize, make this message dynamic. For example, if we want to set this header to something based on the response of the previous step, to do that we have to give it a name. For that, I'm going here to the right side of the parameter, and I can set a name. I can set a name to all parameters anywhere in the integration. So now it has a name and a default. If the header name is set, it will be used. If not, it will use the default. This means that we can run it all the time anywhere without having to specify headers. Every value has a default. And now we need to find something interesting in the HTTP response. The mission name is something, so I can give it a name and name it mission. Oops. So now I have an output and an input, and I can go here and add a mapping. It will give me a list of all the inputs from the step below, and there's currently only one, so I will select it. And now I can select all the outputs from the previous step. In this case, I only have one, so I will select it. And now there's this mapping. So this means the HTTP request will run, will fetch the mission from the output, and will set this as the header. We can have more than one input and more than one output. Also, we can add extra inputs and can add conditions. For example, we can say that the Slack message will only be sent if the status of the HTTP request is 200, or if there are missions in the response or something like that. Conditions can be as complex as you want. So let's explore some other things that could be used for integrations. So if I add a step here, I get a list of all the steps that I can add. Currently we have HTTP request and Slack message, which we already saw, but we can also have Twilio send SMS, send an email using SendGrid, or send a message to Microsoft Teams. And we can see that each has its own custom UI to configure. We can, as before, add names and stuff like that. And here, for example, in SendGrid, we have the API key, the from, and the to, but we can, of course, add more than one person to the to. So we can add one, and we can say that the reply to is to a different address. So now we have one from, two to's, and we specify that the reply to is not the from address. So as you can see, it gets, when the configuration gets complex, is because the solution itself it's complex. We only see what's meaningful, so the UI doesn't get a lot of clutter if we are not using any of the advanced options. Finally, Microsoft Teams, we have to specify many IDs for it to work, and the content at the end. The tool is extensible from day one, because we understand that for different customers, for different use cases, we will have to add integrations over time. So we make it really easy to add new, what we call DSLs, domain-specific sub-languages here, and integrate them in the backend. So over time, we're going to grow the capabilities of the kinds of steps and triggers that can be configured. Right now, this is the current status of the application, and these steps I show here, I still have to implement the backend component that will run the integration. And we plan to have an MVP running on November for users to test, mostly using HTTP requests and Slack and database queries. And from then, from our landing page, we are trying to gather information about on which use cases potential customers want to run it, and in which cloud platforms they want to run it. So we are going to prioritize the marketplaces of cloud providers by most users first, so Amazon Web Service and Slack, and based on users that join the waiting list, we're going to prioritize from there. So this is GlooData, and I hope to hear from you soon. Bye.